Every other week for the 33rd team, I put out an updated 2025 mock draft with a new order, the evolving quarterback landscape, rising prospects, and more. Joe and I are looking at the latest one here today on Locked On NFL Scouting.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5.
We are looking at the latest 2025 NFL mock draft, courtesy of yours truly in the NFL Draft Lead over at the 33rd team. Every other Monday, we put one out, and some evolving names in the back eight, some crowded defensive line prospects that are really populating that back group. We have some rising and falling prospects, and one of those, and I won't say whether they're rising or falling, ends up landing with the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray in their upstart bid to win the West this year. And we look at the quarterback class. Of course, you have to with every NFL draft. And that starts with the team that has the number one overall pick, the Carolina Panthers, and which quarterback they can try to ruin next is what we're looking at here to start things off with this mock draft, Joe. And Joe has not seen it. He's blind. So not legally blind, but he's blind to what the picks are, and he's going to find them out in real time as we record the show here.
I've scrolled the first two picks. I've now seen the first two picks. And it's funny how eventually we get here. The quarterback's at the top, right?
Yeah.
And Cam Ward 1 to Carolina, Shedeur Sanders 2 to Tennessee. And I think that makes sense to me for both of those teams, despite having young quarterbacks. I feel like it's time for a new direction. And Cam Ward certainly positioning himself to be this type of player, the number one pick. But I think what's interesting is the fit of Shedeur Sanders in Tennessee with Callahan. I kind of like that. Yeah. Sheduer certainly can win off script, but I think what's maybe underrated about his game is his ability to win from pocket and throw with timing and anticipation. And that kind of feels like a good marriage to me, and one that this is the first time I think I've seen it or thought about it. And you kind of have a reaction to things, and I think favorably on that idea of Sheduer being the guy for Tennessee if they're in position to get him.
And full transparency, I would have put Sheduer with Carolina if I felt like Dion was going to give any opportunity for that to happen.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Which probably not going to be a fan of that, right? Obviously Dion as a part of Shedeur's camp has already kind of alluded to they're going to want to be selective with the landing spot. And it's happened before. Elway did it. The Mannings did it with Eli. It's not unheard of. And Dion and a power family in like the history of football feels like the backing that can help that to happen, and just no way. But Sheduer, I think, has played a little bit. Cam's played more spectacularly, but I think Cam's played more even keeled. Did I say that right? Shedeur's played more even keeled all the way through the season, and Cam has played more spectacular. There's more highs and lows with Cam, and the highs are spectacular. But some of the self-inflicted wounds that he takes in the gunslinger mentality, I think you could very easily talk yourself into Sheduer being the most even-keeled of these quarterbacks. And you mentioned the fit with Brian Callahan. I really like the style of which he plays and going into a timing-based offense. And I think that fit makes a lot of sense, and it's why I think it's one that even if the Sanders family is going to be selective, it's a landing spot that makes sense.
Not the only quarterbacks in the top 10. You've got Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier going to the Raiders at number 7, and feels like the what do you call this? The Nuss bus? Is that what the kids are calling it?
I believe they call it that too.
Oh,
like the team.
oh, okay.
I believe it's on his LSU bio page.
Oh, the hype is here, man. You're seeing people putting him as QB1. And he goes to the Raiders at 7, which obviously makes sense based on feeling like there's no real answer between O'Connell or Minshew. I feel good about that as well. This is probably my favorite mock draft yet in terms of quarterbacks and landing spots that make the most sense to me. And this, I think this falls in line with that. I feel like there's a lot of momentum for Nussmeier as a guy that we got to be thinking about as the top of the first round quarterback.
Yeah, and obviously he did not play well in the second half against Texas A&M this past weekend. Threw some picks, showed his lack of experience. He came into the year with 18 games played and 1 start, right? So the sample size, the volume, but it's the innate things that he has, despite the lack of volume, that makes him such an attractive player. And you know, if he comes out and has another stinker of a half between now and the end of the regular season, I would not be surprised in the least bit. That's part of the growth and evolution of a player. And you don't have to look any further than what the Indianapolis Colts are experiencing right now as far as the risks involved. And if you sign yourself up for that, you have to be willing to let them play through it. But I think with the Raiders, from the moment that they moved on from Derek Carr, they've kind of been on the outside looking in. And if they're in this position where there are compelling quarterbacks that are available, for me, it was a matter of you can't let this opportunity pass you by. Like, you missed all the quarterbacks last year because they all went crazy out in front of you. You have to be mentally prepared to make the most of this opportunity. And Nussmeier is the one that has the right blend of talents and traits and production with upside and growth that I think makes him the next most appealing quarterback in the class.
Both the Michigan defensive tackles go in the top 11. I really like Kenneth Grant to the Bengals. That feels very much like the exact type of player that they need to reinfuse kind of back into their defense, become a little bit more stout. I'm a big fan of that selection.
Brother, can we raise your glass and pour one out for the Bengals rush defense this year? Like, they gave up over 160 to Philly, and it was like, yeah, that's about right. Like, it's literally almost on average for what they have given up. They have given up through 8 games. They're at over 1,100 rushing yards conceded on the season. And that's 24th in raw yardage, but 11 touchdowns. That's 29th in the NFL. They're getting run on a lot. They're giving up a lot of yards.
Yeah, their EPA per rush, 3rd worst in the NFL. And don't forget that the Dallas Cowboys and New Orleans Saints exist, the 2 teams ahead of them. So they need to get more tough up the middle. If there's one pick that made me say, in this early portion, it's Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona, going to the Browns at number 8.
Yeah, certainly
the valuation feels fine for me, but I wonder with kind of what Cedric Tillman has shown here the last couple of weeks, they paid Judy, right? They have David Njoku. Do you feel like, did you struggle with this as a landing spot, or was this like, hey, this feels like too good of a value for them to not pull the trigger on?
A little bit of good value. I do think, as nice as Cedric Tillman is, we don't let good players prevent us from drafting great players, right? And I think Tetairoa McMillan is a great wide receiver prospect that, especially if Jameis is going to get run, like if he looked great. I mean, they beat the Ravens. Right? Like, I wasn't on the Monday show. I imagine you guys talk quite a bit about how the Cleveland Browns beat the Baltimore Ravens as Jameis Winston threw for 300 yards, which I don't think Deshaun Watson ever did in a game as a starting quarterback of the Browns.
I think if you add up 2 or 3 of his games, he probably got to 300.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're going to let Jameis run it, I think a player like this who can win in all phases, but can be dominant down the field to complement what Jerry Jeudy does well as an upgrade over Cedric Tillman. And what Cedric Tillman is in year 2, right?
I think so. Yeah.
So next year he'd be going into year 3 on a 4-year non-first round pick contract. Like, are you going to give out another contract extension there at the wide receiver position with the salary cap? How long is it going to take to get through the rest of the Watson contract? And, even if Tillman's a productive player, like I think you have room for more than 2 productive wide receivers in your wide receiver room.
All right. We got more picks to get into, including a new weapon for Kyler Murray that I'm going to find out about as well here on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with us. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You got any moneyline dogs you like this week?
Hey, I went 1 for 2.
I know.
Boy,
Do you have any like this week?
I haven't looked yet. I
like Texans plus 108 in New York for Thursday night.
Boy.
How are the Texans 1.5 underdogs?
I don't know, but I need, as soon as we get done, I need to get in on that action for sure. Now, what's Texans, they're without Diggs, certainly not going to play. No Nico Collins. Like, that team's a little bit different without them, but come on.
Joe Mixon, run the ball.
Yeah, right. That's actually working. Funny. Something's wrong with the Bengals. Like, they can't run the ball. And I think it might be structural issues more than it is talent.
I like Patriots plus 138 in Tennessee too, provided Drake May plays.
Well, they beat the Jets with Jacoby Brissett for most of the game.
I know, but there's some big lines this week.
I'm excited to dive into that. Tomorrow? Is it? No, we got 2 more days before we do the lines, right?
2 more days.
Yeah. You traveled, so I get it. You're
out of sorts.
You have no idea. I usually don't know what day it is, so that extra layer is difficult. Did you know that yesterday was National Chocolate Day?
Dang, we missed it this year, huh? I feel like we always make a fuss about National Chocolate Day.
Well, do you even know what happened on the Monday show? Do you have any idea?
I know Chris came on.
Oh yeah, and of course he started the show with Happy National Chocolate Day to you, and we had our moment of you being critical of the way I say chocolate. So I wanted to make sure we reference that here today.
I was trying to not open up Pandora's box.
Yeah, I see that. I saw that you were resisting. Okay, let's move on with this mock draft. Okay, so this is
13 to 24.
Okay, Ashton Jeanty to the Dallas Cowboys feels like just a dream, right? Like that just should happen. But I'm going to move past that. Oh, Will Johnson to the Colts. This is the best pick of the draft so far.
And can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Where should he have gone?
Oh.
Because it's like, I know he fell, but I kept looking at everything in front of him, and I'm like, hard to not put him here, or it's hard to put him here. Hard to not go this direction for this team.
I hear you. I mean, maybe the Giants at 9.
Yeah, but Deonte Banks has been better.
Okay.
Cordell Flott's looking like a little bit of a thing. I know they're excited about Drew Phillips. Their safety room needed a lot of help. They got Malachi Starks, who is an elite prospect in his own right.
Maybe the Rams at 12? I know Carter's
okay,
a heck of a
but then even if he went 12, you'd be like, wow, Will Johnson slid. Right?
Well, yeah. I know that because I have him as a top 3 prospect in the class. So if he goes 14 or 12 or 8, I don't know. I feel like that's going to be good value.
One of the hardest teams to pick was the Saints, and the one thing they do have is a bunch of corners.
Right. Okay, I'm scrolling here. Nic Scourton feels like a super Tampa Bay Buccaneers type pick.
I thought so too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. This Jalon Walker.
The next 2 picks might be my favorite in the whole mock.
Is it 16 and 17?
Yeah.
Jalon Walker to the Seahawks. I'm learning more about Jalon Walker. He feels very Seahawksy.
Oh, Mike McDonald would have a blast.
Yeah.
Putting him on their defensive front and all the things that you could do. And obviously they went and acquired Ernest Jones for some pass rush upside from the linebacker room. And but to pair Jalon Walker, who can also play on the edge with some of the big bodies that Seattle's playing out on the edge right now. Like that's a fit for a player that can get maximized with the coaching staff and what he has in store.
You mentioned the next 2 picks were 2 of your favorites. So Shavon Revel Jr., corner, East Carolina, to the Niners, of course, with Javarius Ward expiring contract.
So Shavon tore his knee, played in like 5 games this year. Joe, his tape is incredible. I did the full write-up on him. There's a lot of Richard Sherman elements in his game as a player at 6'3", 195 pounds, incredible length, much better ball skills than even the ball production, like from a stat sheet perspective, would indicate. An incredible tackler, super physical. If he didn't get hurt and if he'd like tested well, like I would not have been surprised if he'd have been a top 12 pick. Like his tape is amazing. I'm in love with him as a player.
To round out this segment, I want to get into 2 more things. Obviously, we have this segment branded as a new weapon for Kyler Murray, and I see that new weapon is Luther Burden III out of Missouri, the first place Cardinals.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this fit.
So Arizona obviously has Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride as the marquee pieces. They got a lot of youth elsewhere, and it feels like the right intersection of where they're at from a team building perspective to start getting more toys for the quarterback, pieces for the quarterback. They have a lot of the critical positions with young players and drafting Darius Robinson. And I know he hasn't played yet. He's been going through some personal stuff and dealing with a calf injury. Paris Johnson's played well. Just felt like it feels like going into what will be year 3 feels like the right time to add another piece of something. They're far enough in where they've addressed a lot of the primary issues. I know Cardinals fans really wanted another defensive lineman in this spot. I think it's a pretty deep defensive line class. Burden is sliding a little bit, in part because of circumstances outside of his control. Like the quarterback's hurt, the production hasn't been great. There's been emergence of some other players at that position, and McMillan has really created a lot of separation with his play this year as far as like being in a tier by himself. So it's just kind of this perfect storm that I felt like for Arizona, they need somebody else to really help maximize the passing game options that they have, and it was a value that was too good to be true for me.
All right, the first fake name, which basically just means I've never heard of the prospect, so that's all that means. No disrespect to Mr. Derrick Harmon, this defensive lineman from Oregon, going to the Chargers at number 20. It feels like, and I haven't seen the back 10 picks, which I'm sure there'll be some new names in there. But this is like, I feel like these defensive tackles are defensive linemen are creeping up here as these mock drafts are rolling. You hit me with the Mississippi defensive tackle last time. Now here's an Oregon defensive lineman.
Yeah, so Derrick Harmon is a transfer from Michigan State. I won't take the credit here. I believe it was Dane Brugler who recently gave him a lot of love as far as what he was hearing from NFL scouts. And sure enough, you turn on the tape, 6'5", 310, 315, 320-pound guy. Very disruptive. His ability to finish is where he has a lot of room to grow and get better. But he's very active up front, penetration style player in spite of his size. And that was kind of what you were missing. A lot of the penetration guys were undersized guys. A lot of the bigger guys didn't have the disruptive presence to really warrant a lot of a high-end investment from a draft capital perspective. He checks both boxes, and there still feels like there's so much room to grow, and he's in his first year in Oregon, that he's somebody who, because of the positional value that you're seeing the league gravitate towards at defensive tackle, felt like a good opportunity for a Chargers front that really needs some help there.
All right. It's the back 10, back 8. I'm not sure what numbers it is, but I'm excited to dive in because this is always the most fun part of mock drafts is who sneaks into the first round. We'll talk about that on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend that time wisely on yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and so many more. They have some fun, brand new documentary-style courses as well. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I personally love that Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get money in as quick as 15 minutes. Plus, Prize Picks offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download that app today. Use our code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Joe, I have a question for you.
Yes.
And we only have to go through 10. It's the back 10. Typically, we well regard the back 8 as kind of the mystery layer, but we do have 10.
Regard me.
But it's, please regard me.
Look at me with a reference, a movie reference.
Pop culture movie reference.
Wow.
Did you see this quote from Jeff Albert yesterday about accountability?
Oh, no. I'm shocked that there's another accountability quote coming out of a Jets person.
Well, he's getting hammered because the perception is Greg Zuerlein has independently cost him like 3 games this season because he's missing a bunch of kicks. And like they lost the Broncos game because he missed a kick. They missed a bunch of kicks against New England, and that contributed to the loss this past week. Whatever.
Buffalo,
and they haven't
missed some kicks against the Bills.
Yeah. They haven't made any changes at the kicker position. So he was asked about the accountability, how we can preach accountability to the team while still Greg Zuerlein still has a job. And this is the quote, and I want to know what your thought is here. In my opinion, accountability is controlling the controllables. His lack of making kicks is not a byproduct of lack of work, not putting the time in, not devoting himself in every way to the process of getting it right. Accountability to me, it's not always just the results, it's the process. A lot of times we can't control the results.
I don't think it's a bad quote.
I don't think it's a bad quote either. But if there is one thing that you can control more than the average football play, it's probably making kicks.
Yeah, I get it, dude, but it's friggin' middle of the season. It's not like great kickers are walking around, and there's at least proof of concept with Greg Zuerlein. What do you want him to do? You want him to hire the kicker from Missouri that's 250 pounds that everybody likes because he has a cool name, and he's 250 pounds? Like, what are we doing here?
I don't know. I mean, they keep holding tryouts for the kickers.
Right. What more do you want him to do?
I don't know.
This is so far from my leading concern with the New York Jets.
I don't disagree there. I don't know. I'm on a big accountability kick for my own football team, but misery loves company, and they're in it even deeper than we are. So I just happened to see it and was curious. So in your thoughts, because I generally agree process over results is more important, but there does become a point where results have to be the bottom line.
But yeah, I think that's dangerous though. Like, I mean, you just firing everybody because they're not playing well. Like, I mean, at some point,
firing everybody at the end of the season anyway.
Oh gosh, boy. We'll get to their funeral. They're 2-6, so we'll get to funerals. We're not there yet. As your teams get eliminated from the playoffs,
mathematically eliminated. And for the AFC, you might be a bad team. It's not eliminated for a while.
Kyle, there's only 8 teams that are within a game of 500 in the AFC. There are 11 in the NFC.
I know.
This is crazy. Okay, I don't know if 2023 is probably not in the math number here, but I would like to ask you about Mykel Williams. You have him going 23 to the Ravens. I still feel like this is a player I still see going extremely high in mock drafts. And so I think there's some contrast here. Is he not quite living up to the crazy physical traits?
He lived up to it for the first time against Texas. And he dealt with an injury, so he missed a little bit of time in that regard. But yeah, you look at the profile, you look at the length, you look at the disruptive potential that he has, and it hasn't really been matched. I mean, he had 4.5 sacks in each of his first 2 seasons. He didn't get a sack until the Texas game on October 19th, and he played in 5 games in that stretch. So it's kind of why Derrick Harmon lands in this general range in the early 20s too. You can be disruptive, but there's a quality that's different than being disruptive, and it's finishing those plays. And I think that's the biggest thing for Mykel Williams. While you acknowledge you have all the potential in the world, and I would trust very few teams more with him than the Baltimore Ravens to draft and develop another long, high potential pass rush player, because I don't really like paying those guys, right? Like they kind of churn through them,
right?
And take advantage of rookie contracts on that front. I think it's a great fit from that perspective, but I don't see him as a guy who's a surefire thing that you can plug in a lot of different spots.
The Bills get a fake name, so I'm excited to hear about Mr. L.T. Overton, a defensive lineman from Alabama. Interesting that his name is left tackle Overton, and he plays defensive line.
Well, no, come on now. It's L.T. He was originally Texas A&M and then transferred to Alabama.
That's going to be the new thing with every prospect from this point forward for the rest of our lives. Originally
they either transferred in or out of Texas A&M. All of them. Right. Stewart at wide receiver.
What is this?
Walter Nolan went from A&M to Ole Miss, and now L.T. Overton, who you like heavy-handed pass rush guys. This guy's your cup of tea, and he can play in the 280s, but he's got good length. He's a very good power rusher. The splash production maybe is not warranted of getting drafted a lot higher than this. I know some people that we have a great deal of respect for think he's a top 20 player in the class. But former 5-star recruit, so that the raw talent is there. He's in a new environment in Alabama. He's starting to put it together. He has some alignment versatility, which I think is welcomed for Buffalo. And he has the ability to compress the pocket when needed, and he has the ability to play the run, which I know they like guys that on the edge can give you 3-down value.
Feels like maybe a Dwan Smoot replacement type guy.
Yeah,
pair him in there with that mix.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of the rest of the players, which is good news for me. I don't love the Chiefs getting Tyler Warren. We could go ahead and not have that happen.
Man.
Jack Sawyer, very Detroit Lions edge rusher type. Well, I want to ask you this, though, for my last question about the Commanders at pick 29. They get Trey Harris, the wide receiver for Ole Miss. And what I'm curious about here is that I think there's probably some intentionality between you picking this receiver for Jaden Daniels based on what you've learned about Jaden Daniels in that offense in the NFL. What about Trey Harris kind of makes you put that pair together?
He's a explosive vertical plane receiver, and he's a bigger body. He's not a big body. He's not like 6'5" big body type, but like he's athletically like well put together. So you have an area of the field, which I think you look beyond Terry McLaurin. Do they have great field stretchers right now? Like, do they have explosive field stretchers right now? And that feels like an area for Washington where there's a lot of opportunity. This offense that he played in, I'm not going to say he can be what Brian Thomas has been with Jacksonville, right? But you think about an athletic profile with a certain amount of explosiveness, with a certain amount of size and stature, who I think wins in areas of the field that have parallels to what Brian Thomas did at a high level at LSU. It's a lot of stuff down the sidelines. There's very little middle of the field receiving. It's explosiveness off the snap and going to force you to respect my ability to get vertical over top of you. And I'll take that free access if you give it to me. And if you're going to crowd me or you're going to play flat-footed, I'm going to run right by you and I'm going to stack you and I'm going to win down the field. And they got good ball skills in those opportunities. Like that added into what Cliff Kingsbury has cooking right now in Washington feels like it's a next evolution of the passing offense, and he felt like the best guy to do it that was on the board.
Love it. Fun mock. It's I know it's difficult to write a mock draft monthly, let alone every other week, and I think you've done well through 5 weeks. We'll see. There's a lot of mock drafts coming.
Right.
I think you've done well to mix and match, and eventually I'll be ready to do them with you, Kyle Crabbs.
Yeah, and I look forward to putting you on the spot with your first one. I will say the order is we're still early enough in the season where the order is still changing to make each one like a new dynamic experience. You're getting close, right? But, and this is what we can leave this show on. Have you looked at the Week 9 schedule in the NFL yet? We teased it already.
I know of 2 games, the Bills and the Dolphins, and now you've told me that the Jets and the Texans are playing. And I know the Lions and the Packers are playing. That's all I know.
So none of that has anything to do with what I'm about to tell you.
Oh, cool.
The number 2 team in the current NFL draft order is the Tennessee Titans. They play the number 3 team in the current NFL draft order, the New England Patriots.
Okay.
The number 1 team in the NFL draft order is the Carolina Panthers. They play the number 6 team in the NFL draft order, the New Orleans Saints. Number 1 through number 10 or number 9 in the draft order right now is separated by 1 game.
It's a good week to not write a mock draft.
It's a great week to not write a mock draft because you could be picking 1. And if you're not picking 1, if you're picking 1 and you win a game, you could go as far down based on like strength of schedule. You could go as far down as number 7. Yeah, if every other team lost.
That picture looks real different.
Right. And the team that's at 10 is only a game and a half out of the first overall pick because they had a bye. So like the top 10 picks, it's wide open season. And some of these teams are now playing against one another this week. So we talk about that experience being dynamically different. Man, you're a Titans fan. I think you're really hoping you lose against New England and help your leverage here, because if you win that game, it might feel a little hollow relative to what your season outlook looks like, and you lost to a team that's going to be there in the draft order at the end of the road. Let's see, the Jets play the Texans on Thursday, so they're playing a good team. Jacksonville's playing Philadelphia. Who are the Raiders playing? At the Bengals.
Boy.
So the Bengals, who are at 11, are playing the Raiders, who are picking 7 too, and they're separated by a game.
Kyle, I'm not gonna lie, I pulled up the schedule for this week, and there are a bunch of road underdogs that I like.
Yeah,
a bunch.
Yeah.
So I'm literally about to go to FanDuel and get in on these before those lines change.
Yeah,
I really like
them before they change. We don't want to spoil too much and ruin it. We don't really move the book lines, but we'd like to think that we do based on the movement after we do the Thursday.
Perception is reality.
So that's Thursday. You have that to look forward to. Tomorrow, we know what we're doing. We're going to find out. You just
the NFL is going to bless us. I know it. The Lions are trading for somebody today. That'll happen. We got Josh Uche to the Chiefs. We got stuff, and you and I really haven't talked about anything NFL wise in like 5 days. So we got stuff to get to.
It's time. So come back and see us again tomorrow. Kyle Crabbs, he's Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We are out of here.